Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast. I'm David Chen, and with me are
Devendra Hardawar.
And Jeff Kanata.
welcome to the show, everyone. What we're going to do here on today's podcast, we got a lot to cover. We got some what we've been watching to talk with you about, and then we are going to dive into two in-depth reviews. This week, we're going to review Marriage Story, which is out on Netflix right now, and Uncut Gems. Now, I know what people might be thinking, all those of you who listen to the end of every week's Slash Filmcast. Last week, we said that we would be reviewing Uncut Gems this week. But a lot of people pointed out that, hey, Uncut Gems actually is only playing in 2 theaters in the country this week, which I actually didn't know. I actually had read that it was playing wide, so my bad. Yeah. And also that Marriage Story is something that is not... It feels like it's lived an entire a media cycle in the last week. It's gone from a movie that was not out to then it became available on Netflix to then it became like memed about and like a really, really hot topic for a lot of people. And now probably people are tired about talking about it, which is why it's a great idea for us to review it today on the podcast.
Yeah, that's what we do. We talk about the movie that no one can see yet, and then the movie that everyone's sick of talking about.
That's
all
right.
in one episode.
All in one episode right here on the Slash Filmcast. You can find
There's
more
some sort of relativistic algorithm of culture speed right now. We're like in the middle of that.
We are the edge bears in the Goldilocks. You know,
Wow.
we take the 2 edge seats.
Yeah, that's right. Well, anyway, you can find more episodes of this podcast at slashfilmcast.com. Email us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. All right, so we have a lot to cover. Let's talk first about what we've been watching this week. This week, I had a chance to check out 6 Underground, the newest film by Michael Bay. Now, I don't know what y'all had heard about this movie. Devendra, apparently you heard
I've
it was
seen the trailer. I've seen the trailer. I've heard of this movie. I was really wondering why he was remaking a Sneaker Pimps song. Is that Sneaker Pimps? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like a deep 90s cut. But yeah, that trailer looked like a mess. I'll probably watch it eventually, but I know you were just ready, Dave, as soon as you saw it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched this movie almost immediately after it went live on Netflix, and I was craving a low budget, more personal, tightly told story on the realm of like in the vein of like Pain and Gain. That like I think that was Michael Bay's last good film, in my opinion.
Really good movie, yeah.
Jeff Kanata, you have an opinion on Pain and Gain?
I never saw it.
Oh.
I never got a chance to see it.
It's a solid.
You'd love it.
It's a solid
love it,
film.
man.
Yeah, I think you'd
Yeah.
actually appreciate it. It's like when Michael Bay took a step back from like the kind of epic action movies, and then he went to make Pain and Gain, and it's like, oh wow, the guy can still make a really well-directed, kind of small thriller-esque story. And
That's the movie starring Mark Wahlberg and The Rock's muscles, right?
Yep, that's
Yes,
correct. Yeah,
sure,
yeah.
sure. It's
Solid
about bros and their feelings, but also a really like The Rock doesn't really make many movies like that. So
Yeah.
that's fascinating.
So that movie came out in 2013, and then he made Transformers: Age of Extinction, the 13 Hours movie, and then Transformers: The Last Night after that. And I was thinking, oh man, this is a return to form for Michael Bay. He's going to go back to kind of the fetishization of law enforcement officers that kind of helped to define his career, but it's not going to be a Transformers movie. Really excited about that. I mean, this guy has been making Transformers movies since 2007. It's for better or worse, it's come to define his career. And so I was really excited that, hey, maybe because of the fact that it stars mostly humans, and because of the fact that it's Ryan Reynolds, very charismatic guy, it's the people who wrote Deadpool, writing the script for this. Like maybe this is going to be like Michael Bay reined in again. Maybe it's going to be like him doing some exciting work on a smaller scale. Well,
can I wager a bet on
wager, Jeff.
I'm going with no.
Well, it just so happens you're absolutely correct. The movie cost $150 million, by the way. So a little bit wrong about the scale of it. And I would say, yeah, for the most part, it looks like it cost $150 million. This movie is completely incomprehensible. And I tweeted about it after I saw the movie. I said, Michael Bay's 6 Underground is a 2-hour-long car commercial, watch commercial, Army commercial, Discovery Channel travelogue, and U.S. propaganda video, all mashed into one. Only
That sounds like a
without
Transformers movie.
only without the plot coherence and basic rules of filmmaking continuity that description might imply.
Oh wow.
And yeah, I mean, it is amazing how many rules of cinema that he breaks in the course of making this film. Let's just go cover the plot of Six Underground real quick. The plot, according to online, is 6 individuals from all around the globe, each the very best at what they do, have been chosen not only for their skill but for a unique desire to delete their pasts to change the future. Right. So it's these guys who are
That
like,
makes sense. Yeah.
who are like
I'm
ghosts.
listening.
These guys are like ghosts, right? And they have all been the underground refers to the fact that they're all quote unquote dead. Like they've all like had funeral. They've all been like horrible accidents, quote unquote. They've all died, and they've all had funerals, and all their family thinks they're dead. And so it's so they can kind of live, off the grid. You see. And they only refer to each other by numbers because Ryan Reynolds masterminded the whole group, and he does not want anyone to get too emotionally attached to each other. You can place bets on how well that goes during the course of the movie as well.
That's because no one's ever fallen in love with a number, right?
Correct. That is.
No one's
I'm
ever
actually.
fallen in love.
I'm
no one
pretty
has
sure
ever
that's.
fallen in love with a perfect 10.
I'm pretty sure that is actually a line in the film. By the way, like no one's ever fallen
Yeah.
in love with a number. And
Sure.
Ryan Reynolds plays one.
Oh, Derek begs to differ.
Ryan Reynolds plays one, and he is a billionaire who made his fortune off of magnet technology. And he recruits all these people, and because he's a billionaire, he is able to like buy all these amazing guns and gadgets and vehicles and stuff like that. I guess it doesn't make that much less sense than Batman. You know what I mean? Because it's like, okay, how could a billionaire live off the grid and no one recognizes him, and like these massive transactions for all these weapons and
It really does show how dumb the idea of Batman is, basically. So good job.
if
Good
there's
job, Michael.
one contribution to cinema Six Underground has made, it is revealing how stupid Batman is. That's correct. And I will say the first 20 minutes of this film is it's like an extremely extended car chase sequence. And it takes place with I'll just describe the premise is like there's these 2 women in these amazing looking dresses in the back seat of the car, with one of them trying to dig a bullet out of the other one. And then Ryan Reynolds is in the front seat while David Franco is driving. And Ryan Reynolds is trying to scan a guy's eyeball into a phone to unlock like all this important information on this phone. So he's using an eyeball because it's a retinal scanner. He's holding an eyeball that's been ripped out of this guy's skull. And they're driving around, I think, Italy, right? Like high-speed car chase scene in Italy. And that lasts for a good 20 minutes, that scene. And I will say there are actually some pretty breathtaking visuals during the course of that scene. I mean, there's one of the guys also does parkour, and he's doing it on the outside.
You got to do the parkour.
You got to do the parkour.
Come on.
It's actually some
2019.
really good parkour. Like honestly, whenever the parkour guy wasn't on screen, I was like, when are we going to see Poochie again? You know, when are we going to see the parkour guy because he's so cool? And
Poochie would
so
have loved this.
that is the opening scene of the film. And honestly, you don't need to watch anything else. If you just watch the first 20 minutes, you've seen what the movie has to offer, pretty much.
I love that this basically sounds like Michael Bay's Irishman. This is the power of Netflix, just the unfettered, ego of a filmmaker. Just let them go, be they a genius or Michael Bay.
So I always thought that Transformers was like Michael Bay Unchained, but it turns out that like this is Michael Bay even further Unchained. He doesn't even have the constraints of a Hasbro franchise to hold him down anymore in this one. This is just pure Michael Bay-id. There is zero attention paid to the plot. What is amazing is like basic filmmaking continuity is violated on a day-to-day, like on a moment-to-moment basis. And what I mean by that
I love
is
the idea that there was meetings with the Hasbro people where they're reining him in. I like the idea that there's like the Hasbro guy like holding a toy going, "Look, Michael, look, it can't bend that way. Look."
we need you to have less sex and violence in your films. Yeah, that's basically what they. I think it's clear from watching Six Underground that was the moderating influence that they had, and filmmaking continuity. I mean, Michael Bay's filmmaking continuity has never been the strongest. You know, like filmmaking continuity, for those who don't know, is like when you're shooting a scene. It's important that when you cut back and forth from certain characters, that if you're, if they're sitting at a table and there's like a cigarette that's burning or a glass full of water, you want that glass of water to stay roughly at the same level, or you want that cigarette to stay roughly at the same length, because you don't want to be distracted by the fact that we're watching, filmmaking and people doing these shots at different times. Like, you want to be sucked into that illusion of what's going on, right? Michael Bay completely disregards any of those rules and instead makes up for it by sheer number of cuts and kineticism, right? He's like, he's hoping you will not mind the complete.
You're always disoriented.
You're always disoriented. So, like, I'll throw out a few examples. I'm actually going to think about making a video about this, but it's basically like, there's a character who, like, jumps into a pool to hide at one point. Literally, the next time you see him, he's out of the pool, climbing up the side of a building, completely dry, right? No explanation as to how that happened. At one point, a character is driving a car, slams into another car. Then his car suddenly starts flipping, and they're on a completely different street altogether. It's just like basic things like that. That it's like
this sounds like a Family Guy version of a Michael Bay action scene, like the chicken fight, basically just going on and on. Except that's coherent.
The chicken fight had had continuity though from scene to scene. Like, the basic rules are violated here. It just doesn't. And then he doesn't care. He's just throwing all these shots at you.
I think basic rules are for lesser filmmakers than Michael Bay.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I mean, I think that what we're really discovering is that the studio notes process has been actually can be good sometimes, because my guess is Netflix just handed him $150 million and was like, "Hey, go to town, Michael Bay." And Six Underground is the result. I can't say I didn't enjoy it.
Are you not entertained?
I can't say I didn't enjoy it. I mean, there's some cool stuff with magnets that happen during the course, at the end, because I mentioned that Ryan Reynolds is a magnate magnate.
Magnate.
He's a magnet magnate, and so
you know what things $150 million could solve in the world, like.
Yeah, you could buy like a whole state, like education, like college education or something like that.
College education.
Instead,
water crisis.
We got basically the opposite of that.
Cash towards that. Yeah.
We got basically we actually took away people's education by showing them Six Underground. Like they got dumber after watching it. Yeah, I mean, I had some fun with the movie. It makes absolutely no sense.
Do they actually say the line "magnet magnate" in it? Because
no, that's another big downside of the movie.
Oh, come on! It's sitting right there.
I don't know. I might have faded in and out of consciousness during the course of the film, so maybe they said it while I was passed out. But I don't think they said anything that clever in the course of the movie. And I mean, I mean, just like it feels like the level of filmmaking of like Suicide Squad, if you remember that. Like for example, like there's one moment in the movie where they're like introducing the characters, and he's like, "Hey," so Ryan Reynolds like recruits them all, right? And the character says, "Yeah, I remember the first time I met Ryan Reynolds' character. He just shows up at the most weird times." Flashback to when this character met Ryan Reynolds for the first time, and then you're thinking to yourself, "Oh, well, then they're going to show the flashbacks to when all these other characters met him." Nope, never happened. Just like stuff that you think you understand about movies.
Yeah. They're subverting the recruiting team montage.
Yes,
that's what they're doing.
Yes,
yeah,
yes. It's like Suicide Squad. It's like a lot of people saying it's like Michael Bay channeling Tony Scott, which I think is a very charitable way of looking at it.
How dare you?
So you're saying the movie about the people who you think are dead, but they're a team, so that they can go and do cool stuff, is a little bit like the movie about the people who are dead, but they're a team, so they can go and do cool stuff?
Yeah, no, I think that's correct. You're talking about Suicide Squad right now, right?
Yeah, Six Underground and Suicide Squad are just two different ways of saying the same thing.
It's true. It's true.
And see, both, and when they're the bad guys too, Jeff, and that made no sense whatsoever. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and they're both equally comprehensible, I would say.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know how much more I can talk about this movie without like. I think you guys get the impression. I think you guys understand what I'm saying. The movie is Six Underground. It's on Netflix right now. I don't know
my
if
What I
parents-
think you're saying is that it's going to be on your top 10 of the year list.
I mean, I'm strongly considering it.
My parents saw this movie and they called me and were like, "This movie is hopeless." And my parents have very low standards for like streaming entertainment, so I'm really looking forward to seeing this someday.
Awesome. I also had a chance to watch Waves, this movie by Trey Edward Schultz. Have you guys heard of this movie?
Yes. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it didn't do too well at the box office this weekend, but I just want to say that, and by the way, I'll say also that I feel like the trailer for this movie reveals extremely little about the film. Like, I had no idea what the plot of this film was, and I'll just read like a quick snippet of the plot summary here. It says, it is an epic, emotional journey of a suburban African-American family. And I'll leave it at that. I mean, I won't reveal what happens during the course of the film. I'll just say that this movie is very good. Trey Edward Schultz is a filmmaker who makes movies that I feel are pretty uncommercial. Like the movies he's made are Krisha, It Comes at Night, which I think is a movie we all liked, right? Did we all like It
Yeah.
Comes at Night?
I think that was a little confusing because it was not what a lot of people expected, but yeah, it was also I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it quite a bit. And then there's this movie Waves, is his third feature. And without revealing anything about the plot, I'll say that what is great about this movie is are the performances, and specifically Kelvin Harrison Jr., who plays one of the characters he's the son in It Comes at Night. He's great in both that movie and this movie. But the breakout star of this film is Taylor Russell, who plays the daughter character in this family in the movie Waves. I mean, I had no idea who this actor was before I saw Waves. She was also one of the leads in Escape Room, actually, if you've seen that movie. And this is like performance is like a meteor that came out of nowhere and like destroyed my life. I mean, she is ridiculously good in this movie. And I think it's one of the best films of the year just because of the power of these performances. They're so good. They're dealing with emotions that are so raw. And it's a shame more people aren't seeing it, but I think you should. It's out in limited release right now. The movie is Waves. And it will devastate you. That's the other thing. I think that's been a running theme on the podcast the last few weeks.
Right.
Is we've been talking about devastating movies.
Every Oscar contender that we see this season is basically like, we'll rip your heart out. So I've gotten used to it.
Honestly, it
Yay.
reminded me a little bit of Requiem for a Dream, to be honest with you. Which
Yeah.
is like
Oh,
a
man.
movie that would like kind of destroyed me, and but it's also like a pretty slow paced movie. Requiem for a Dream, I feel like, is pretty deliberately paced, and like the levels of tragedy build upon each other. And Requiem for a Dream is very extreme, and it deals with drug use, and there's very little of that in Waves. But it's just like you kind of see where this train is going. You kind of see that it's going to collide with something. You don't know exactly where or how it's going to happen, but it does. And when that happens, it's pretty upsetting. And you need to have the right frame of mind to go into a movie like this.
Sounds like I'm watching Six Underground.
The movie's Waves, and again, big shout out to Taylor Russell and Kelvin Harrison Jr. putting in two of the best performances of the year. Taylor Russell, she is going to be a star. I mean, I think based on this movie, she is incredible in this movie, and it is worth watching it just to see Taylor Russell in this film. That is what I have to say about it. Okay. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Last Black Man in San Francisco. That's a movie that Devindra shouted out last week on Devindra's recommendation. I went to go see it. It's streaming right now on Prime Video. I think it's very good. I think you're right, Devindra. It's basically about the impacts of gentrification and what we lose in that process. And I think it's very kind of weird style of filmmaking. I haven't seen a film.
It's very
like it.
Spike Lee.
Yeah,
like it's sort of like a modern Spike Lee thing. Yeah,
very Spike Lee. Portions are very surrealist. And but overall, I think it's unique and worth checking out, and certainly very relevant in this day and age. That's The Last Black Man in San Francisco. It's on Prime Video right now. All right, Devindra, why don't we go to you real quick and then get to our first sponsor?
Sure. I just wanted to briefly mention the season finale. I guess this entire season of Watchmen on HBO, and just have to say they did it. They knocked it out of the park. Like Damon Lindelof and his writing staff and everybody. Like I think a lot of people were worried that he couldn't quite pull off this sort of like crazy retelling. Well, not retelling, but this crazy like direct sequel to the Watchmen comic, because this show goes places. It does some wild things, and I'm sitting here waiting until Jeff sees it and just like starts screaming over what happens, because there's some major spoilers floating around, Jeff, and I don't know how you're surviving here. But it's incredible. It's incredibly well written, and I love that thematically he really brought home what I guess some of the broader themes from Watchmen, but also like modernize them to something that's more relevant today. There's a lot of talk about like, I don't know, like people who have powers and the responsibility they have with those powers. I found that really interesting around the finale. The show can also be weird and wild, like so much of the leftovers and even Lost at times. I am definitely tired of hearing people whine about the ending of Lost or how Lost treated them. I was right there. I was along for that ride. I was frustrated by Lost. I like the finale in the last season, but I think the leftovers proved, that Damon Lindelof writing something and building a show that's a little more focused, that isn't like 24 episodes per season. He can craft something a little more interesting. Leftovers is one of my favorite TV shows ever made, and right now Watchmen is right up there. So I'm just very glad this all, he was able to pull it all off. We don't even know if there's going to be a season 2, and honestly, that's fine. It's fine if he just backs away from this, because it is a perfect bit of television.
I really liked Watchmen as well. I finished the final episode last night, all 9 episodes. And yeah, it's very good. He stuck the landing.
Did.
Wasn't the perfect ending. There was still a bunch of like loose ends to tie up, I think, and I do think like there was like it's a thing where he's introducing mysteries up until almost near the end.
Were you a Peteypedia reader, Dave?
No, I wasn't. I think I feel like shows should stand on their own without you needing to do homework.
They should. But the Peteypedia was this weird thing where it was like the chronicles of the FBI, one of the FBI agents in the show, just like his the notes, the reports he would send back, and it was just like little tidbits. I think it's a good accessory for the people who watch shows and want everything to be something like freaking Westworld, like a puzzle to be solved and all the pieces. I think thematically and character-wise, the show stands on its own. But if you're like, what happened to that one dude who went into that one thing? Where's that guy? It's an interesting way to like wrap up some of those loose ends, I think. So I don't mind that. The people who want to dive into that stuff really can, and people like me, like I like it. I will look at it occasionally, but I'm not. My enjoyment of the show is not dependent on how I solve the puzzle or how enjoyable the puzzle is, basically.
Yeah, and I think the show did a great job of modernizing the themes of the original comic book. What are the biggest menaces we're dealing with today? It's no longer the Cold War, right? It's white supremacy and racism in many of our institutions. At least that's one of our big challenges.
Yeah. And it goes straight at it, and that is that is wild. It is just like from the beginning, it just never lets up, and got to give him credit for that. And bringing in writers of color too to kind of help flesh out that season, because if it was just Damon Lindelof doing that, I'm not sure if it would have been so textured and so interesting. So there's so much going on in the show. I love it so much.
I think one of my favorite things about him talking about the writers' room is this is like a very like I'm going to be as vague as I can, but basically if you haven't seen, so if you like want to avoid anything, just skip forward by a few seconds. But basically he retcons Watchmen so that one of the characters in the Watchmen comic is black, right? And he explores the implications of what that means and why that character was black, and like why one would think that character might be black, and then why that turns out to be true, and so on. And I remember hearing an interview with him where he basically said that when he was doing this, he wanted people in the writers' room who maybe didn't agree with him. Like he's like, hey, I'm gonna make the X character a black character, and there's a bunch of people who are like, oh my gosh, it's so cool, yeah, let's totally do that. And he did not hire those people. Like he wanted people to be like, maybe we shouldn't do that, or maybe there's like a lot of problems with that. And I just thought that was a really interesting way of going about it. Is that like you actually want people to like say why you're wrong, and then like see if you two can come together to make something better or more thoughtful than what you would have before. I really admired that. And people can have varying opinions about whether he actually did a good job this season. I personally think that he and all the people from the writers' room killed it. But I think he tried to be as thoughtful as he could, and that may or may not be enough. But in my book, this was a really towering work of television, and it deserves to be watched. So that's Watchmen on HBO. All right.
Hey guys, I had my earphones out through all of that because I'm really far behind. But while I was sitting there by myself, alone, in the quiet, I remembered something that I wanted to say at the very beginning of this episode.
Uh-huh.
I'm real dumb. And there's new and ongoing evidence of my stupidity.
I remember,
Oh,
yes.
boy.
Yes, I'm glad we're addressing this.
So last week, I made a big deal about talking about the morning show because I had, finished the season. And I also
you
made a
finished
big
the
deal.
season.
Yeah. I made a big deal about how it was odd that the last episode ended the way it did because it felt like this real departure from
It's
the
very
rest of the season.
avant-garde. Yeah.
And Jeff, let me tell you, when you said that, okay, I'm not following the morning show, but when you said, hey, it was weird that the morning show ended with a flashback episode, David Chen, thought to on the air while we were recording, I thought to myself, wow, that is odd. I mean, I've seen many TV shows, and many TV shows. I'm thinking like The Shield. I'm thinking Escape from Dannemora.
Are you gonna list all the TV shows you've seen?
Many TV shows. Many TV shows have like a backdoor pilot in like episode 8 or 9 of a specific season, right? Like second to last episode, third to last episode, they'll like flash back in time and show you like, oh, here's all the stuff that happened before the main events of the show. And so, as you were saying, I'm like, wow, that is so weird because I could understand if the morning show had a flashback episode like right before the end, but for it to be the final episode to end on a flashback, that's just A, extremely daring, and B, very weird. But you know what? It's Jeff Kanata. I trust him completely. Why would Jeff lie or be wrong about something extremely obvious like when a show is going to end?
Right. And kudos to you for trusting me for the first time ever in the history of the show.
Yeah.
It was a bad time, it turns out, to do that.
Oh, really? Was it?
Because I am a profoundly dumb person, it turns out. It wasn't the end. There's 2 more episodes this season.
Oh,
and
okay.
If I have but a tiny bit of defense, in just speaking to my own defense, just the tiniest bit, having said several times now how just real dumb I am.
Yeah.
This is literally the first show I've watched on a brand new streaming channel. And so I guess it just wasn't clear to me how their system works because it just didn't seem obvious that there was going to be more. It just felt like that was the last one, and we and said here we're going to transition you to a different show now. And I know that they're releasing them not all in a bulk. I mean, I know now that they're not. So mea culpa. But there's 2 more episodes.
It's just as amazing because you were so sure about it, Unless you were so sure. You're like, well, it was 8 episodes. I figured, hey, why not take a chance on this? I'm like, oh, this man, this sounds like a man who's researched how many episodes there are in this show, right?
Yeah, you'd think.
I did think.
You'd think he wouldn't broadcast that kind of information to literally thousands of people.
I would actually say it's tens of thousands. It's tens of thousands, actually.
Oh,
it's more than enough to fill a football stadium if people listen to this podcast right now.
In the words of David Chen, it's dozens of thousands of people.
Correct.
Yeah. No, you'd think that I wouldn't want myself to look quite that dumb in front of quite that many people. But, you'd be wrong because I did it.
Well, I hope you enjoy the last 2 episodes of the morning show, which are not flashback episodes, I assume. So
I assume that too, but I'm never going to watch them because to me the show's over. I'm just kidding.
In your head, it's over.
Kidding. We'll probably watch them.
Speaking of things that aren't offensively dumb, let's talk about our first sponsor, Jeff.
8 Hours is our sponsor, and It has never been a better time to be a lover of film. We have access to the world of movies and TV like never before. Likewise, the past several years have seen an explosion of film lovers sharing their thoughts, research, and analysis of movies and TV through beautifully crafted video essays that aim to teach, share, and inspire. 8hours.com has organized over 6,000 of these videos into an extensive database for you to explore a variety of content on specific movies, directors, genres, and most importantly, filmic concepts, from as broad as cinematography and directing to as specific as videos on lenses and blocking. If you're like me, you love finishing a movie and immediately searching online for scene breakdowns, analysis, and interviews with the filmmakers. Well, search no further. Whether you're a filmmaker or a film lover, 8hours.com has made it easier than ever to find the information and inspiration you're looking for. Tuition free! Let's explore the future of film education and discussion together at 8hours.com. That's the number 8, HOURS.com, for film lovers.
All right. Before we move on to our review of Marriage Story, we got to thank all the people who donated to the show. Thanks to user Joe Fox for donating at the rate of $2 per month and subscribing to us there. Thanks also to Hendrik Eising from Germany for his donation. And got a couple messages to read this week from some donors. Tina Shin writes in. Tina Shin, a Slash Filmcast listener I've met in real life. She's supported several of the shows I've been doing. Big fan of hers. She writes in, "Hi, Dave, Jeff, and Devindra. Thanks so much for putting on such a great podcast that I love listening to every week. And a special thanks to Dave for walking me through the purchase of my new LG OLED TV. Now I have a TV that deserves to play the Halo jump scene from Mission Impossible Fallout. Although I recently watched Chernobyl, and that was something I probably didn't need to watch on this TV. Hope you guys have a wonderful holiday season. I'm looking forward to your various top movies of the decade list and your reviews of the Oscar movies." So that's from Tina. And so I had a chance to hang out with Tina a few months ago, and we met in Seattle. And we were talking about how, like, Mission Impossible Fallout had just come out on home video, and it looked like garbage on a non-OLED TV. Like, if you watch it on an LCD TV, like, there's so many scenes that take place at night in that movie, and you want, like, the Halo jump sequence from Mission Impossible to look amazing. And
you need a good, like, LCD TV, because the cheap ones will not do
inky
it.
blacks.
You want the inky blacks. You want the inky blacks, which you can get on an LG OLED TV.
Where is our check, LG? Like, LG
No
owes
kidding.
us something for every one of these recommended
But also,
sales.
Dave, my understanding is the process of you walking someone through the purchase of a OLED TV takes 2.5 years?
Yeah,
That's
no,
my
that's
understanding?
this is the culmination of a massive effort. Is this donation? So, anyway, thanks Tina for that lovely message. Okay, thanks also to Ryan Pauly for giving us a massive donation. He writes this message: "Hey Slash Filmcast, longtime listener, first time caller. Your podcast has always been the bright part of my week. From listening to discussions about the cultural relevance of Avatar to discovering some of my favorite shows and movies through your what you've been watching recommendations, to laughing somehow every time at Jeff's 'Well, Dave.' I just wanted to donate to thank you guys for bringing such a quality podcast to us every week. I'm a filmmaker, and funny as it sounds, one of my personal goals is to one day make a feature that David, Devindra, and Jeff would watch and discuss on the podcast. My new short film is an action comedy called Pizza Time. It's about a legendary pizza delivery driver who stumbles into the scene of a hitman's contract killing. I made it as my first foray into action cinema, a genre I love very much. I think Jeff would get an extra kick out of the fact that my friend Eric Jacobus, who plays the hitman in the short, did the combat motion capture performance for Kratos and Baldur in God of War. Anyways, if you have an extra 10 minutes, I'd be incredibly honored if you guys checked it out. pizzatimeshort.com. Wishing you three and your families the happiest of holidays." That's from Ryan Pauly, who writes in about pizzatimeshort.com. We will try to check that out, Ryan, and thanks so much for listening and for your
Very cool,
generous
man.
donation.
Congrats on making something. It's hard to make a thing.
It is
And-
hard to make a thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is to be admired, and thanks to Ryan for the donation. Of course, if you always want to Of course, if you want to donate to us, you can always do so at paypal.me/filmcast. That's paypal.me/the word filmcast. We never want you to donate if it in any way causes you hardship. But if you do have some extra cash you want to throw it our way, paypal.me/filmcast. That's paypal.me/wordfilmcast. Of course, you can only support us for $0 by going to the Apple Podcast listing for the /filmcast and leaving a review for us, or even a star rating. It takes like 3 seconds to do it. It really does help, because I don't know if you know this, there are a lot of other film podcasts out there. So
Don't tell them that.
that's how you can support us for free. Thanks again for all of our donors this week. A lot of people donate a lot during the holidays. I think the holidays are a time to reflect on what we've been given. And it's also a time to reflect on what we want to get out of our lives, which leads us to our review of Marriage Story.
That's a segue.
Wow.
Nailed it, guys. Nailed it. All right, what do we consider a spoiler in this?
I
would say anything. I don't know if there are spoilers.
No. The trailer kind of
basically
lays out what you think is going to happen. Yeah.
the very last scenes, I would say, are spoilers. But other than that,
Yeah, I think that's right.
Although people were throwing those online too, like clips of that scene are online. It's crazy.
Yeah, I would say like they hire Laura Dern and and
Ray
Alan
Liotta?
Alda, and like
Oh.
anything after
Yeah,
that,
up to that.
I would
yeah.
say is like a spoiler. Okay, okay. That was from the trailer for Marriage Story, the newest film by writer-director Noam Baumbach. I'm going to read the plot summary from IMDb. Noam Baumbach's incisive and compassionate look at a marriage breaking up and a family staying together. This is a /filmcast, and I think, we were moved to review this because I think I saw that Jeff had seen the film at my recommendation. I assume, Jeff, on that. On
yes,
Netflix,
of
right?
course.
You tweeted
Yes.
about it, and then I saw a flood of messages in the Slack Filmcast at slackfilmcast.com. Basically, people saying, "Oh man, I hope they're reviewing Marriage Story." Nope, they're reviewing Uncut Gems, a movie that I cannot see. So I was like, you know what, guys, let's try to make it a double review. So that's what we're doing, and I think probably more people will have seen Marriage Story this week than will have seen Uncut Gems, but I hope people have a chance to enjoy both of them. All that being said, Devindra, why don't we start with you? What has been your opinion on Noah Baumbach movies in the past, and what did you think of Marriage Story?
Oh, I've enjoyed some of his work. There are certainly some things, like I'm not a big trying to think what was he all of his movies kind of run together for me. The one about the family,
Squid and the Whale?
Squid and the Whale.
Yeah.
Squid and the Whale. I feel like something like Squid and the Whale felt really abrasive to me and hard to like really. I had a hard time like latching onto those characters, and I also feel like a lot of his films just come through a very like, like white upper middle class perspective that I can't always jive with. It's fine. It's his thing. It's just not always for me. I think some of his more recent movies have been more interesting. Certainly, like Francis Ha. I feel like that's a great film. So Marriage Story, I was regretting. I was avoiding this movie, I think, for a while because looking at the trailer, looking at what it's about, looking at who it's coming from, I know for certain it would make my heart hurt, basically. So congratulations, movie. Thank you, Slack Filmcast, for putting us through this movie. It's an excellent movie, but it tore my heart apart. It's especially hard to or especially meaningful because we're seeing this movie starts with this family, Adam Driver, Scarlett Johansson, and their child living this great like artistic, almost bohemian lifestyle in New York. It is very much like the dream lifestyle, I think, for a lot of people in Brooklyn. In fact, their subway stop is not too far from me. All the opening scenes is just like, oh, I'm there. That's the tennis court I pass every day. So it's a lot of those.
The
things.
LA scenes are that for me.
Yes. Yeah. So it all kind of hit close to home. I was like, okay, I could take this. I found it really insightful and really interesting. There are so many films about the process of divorce, I think, and this one goes about it in a really like humane and empathetic way. And both sides aren't always right. I think there's we can argue this in spoilers. I think there's certainly a side that does not come down well on Adam Driver's character ultimately. But what's interesting is both perspectives are valid, even if somebody is more of a jerk than another. And the responses to this whole situation, the way they go through it, is all so very humane. Yeah, I love this thing. It hurt my heart. Thanks a lot.
Jeff Kanata.
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my thoughts on the Marriage Story are best summed up in the form of a limerick.
That surprises me because the limerick feels kind of lighthearted for a movie of the subject matter. But you're full of surprises, though. I guess
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see how you think after the next 5 lines. You don't need to be wearing a ring for this film to be deeply moving. It's exquisite and true and relatable too, because it's about the death of something.
Oh,
all right. All right, poignant, Jeff. Poignant.
Yeah, on the cover. Yeah,
Okay,
on the cover of the Netflix. Yeah.
Don't judge the lyric by its form, baby.
Yeah.
It's a flexible
don't hate the
form.
player, hate the game. You know.
So it's not a very popular thing to say these days, but I was formed filmically by falling in love with the films of Woody Allen. I love them. I still love them. I know you can't say these things anymore, but I still love them. I love the aesthetic of his movies.
I think you can say them because you just said them, but you know.
I said them, but most people won't. But I love the way his characters talk. I love the way those movies are shot. I love how it's long takes and wide shots, and they're like plays, and they're showcases for actors, and they're about New York, and they're about this life that I never lived, but I always fantasized about living. This, like Navindra was saying, this very bohemian, artistic. I love theater. I have done a lot of stage work, not lately because I had kids, but but that's the life that I always sort of fantasized about. And I think Noah Baumbach for me is that also. And I think Devindra rightly points out some sort of problematic things that go along with that, but I still love it. I still fantasize about that world and that life and those things, and I love his movies. I love his movies. I talked when we talked last year about the Meyerowitz stories, and I love that movie. I think While We're Young is probably one of my favorite films of the last 5 years.
Oh yeah, we reviewed that. That was great. Yeah,
I love that movie. And that movie's about getting old and sort of not, recognizing that you're not part of a young generation. And this movie, it's interesting. I think Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson are amazing in this, but I kind of feel like they're both too young for this subject matter. I kind of wish they had a little bit older actors playing these roles. But that's a minor quibble to what I think is just an incredible movie and incredibly moving. Go ahead.
To what you're saying, Jeff, I do feel like a lot of films about divorce are about those like 40-something characters, right? Or the kids are out of high school, the kids are at the house. Like it's another stage of their life, and now they're thinking of the end, and it's like, oh, we don't actually like each other, let's split up. To me, the idea of this 30-something family, very vibrant, very apparently successful from the outside and happy, splitting apart makes it even more impactful to me, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. Dave, we talked about this movie last week. I think it was that you really warned against watching it with my wife. You said it was not a movie, that you would recommend doing that for. And I took your advice and I started watching it. And 20 minutes in, I paused it. I got up and I went and got my wife and I said, "You got to come in and watch this with me," because I think this movie. I mean, I understand that you would describe it, Devindra, as being brutal, and I understand, Dave, you would describe it as being hard thing to watch as a couple, or you're seeing something that couples kind of don't want to think about played out in really grim detail, and especially when the movie gets into the process of divorce, it is very harsh. But I think it's a movie about love. I think it's a movie about the beautiful things. I mean, it's a movie that begins with a list of the things that they like about each other. And
I'm just flashing the potential spoiler alert to you, Jeff. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. But
I agree. I agree with you
It is a
completely, but I
movie
think
that
that wraps up where the movie goes. Yeah.
no, I don't mean to talk. I just mean that like that. I don't think that is ever lost. Like
Yep.
these are people that love each other throughout the whole movie.
No
They,
matter
it's
how
just
like
it's
hard, like how much they fight, right? I think that was
yes,
kind of
it's
fascinating. Yeah.
and it's a movie. It's kind of a movie about hope. Like it's a movie about making the decision that you can be happier apart, but still have a life together.
Yep. Hmm.
And I found it moving and beautiful in a very hopeful way. Yes, it's dark. Yes, there are scenes of brutality, verbal brutality, and these people clearly have done things to each other that you wouldn't want to do in a marriage that you would want to last. But they're also it just feels very true and very honest. I mean, there's a specific sequence that maybe I should wait for spoilers for that I'd like to reference, but I don't know. Let me talk just sort of in general about this film. I love how this movie is expressed. I think this is and it's funny, we just did the 8 hours ad and blocking was referenced. I think this is the best blocked movie I have seen
Yeah.
all year.
There's one Scarlett Johansson scene that is just like the art of blocking her when she's
the
walking out of the
monologue, right?
room. Yeah. Yeah.
The moment when she goes into the bathroom and she comes out, but every sequence is like that. There's the big argument scene that plays down the hall and into the room, and he's folding clothes, and then they come back. Like every scene is blocked like a play. It's blocked with movement and business, and the camera is just capturing life. It's not staged like a movie. It's staged like life, messy and complicated, and the way our brains work, which is like I'm having this discussion, but I'm also doing 6 other things because that's what we do as humans. You don't just stand there and talk to each other. You're like, especially in a marriage, you're like doing housework and futzing with crap, and like it's so wonderful how that is captured in this movie and how people communicate and move, and the dialogue is just so rich and beautiful, and all of the performances, I mean every single side character. I think if I had to pick a list of my favorite actors of all time, it'd be hard to find anybody that goes above Alan Alda. I think he's a genius, and he's amazing in this, like a small role, but there's so many just great. Laura Dern's amazing in this movie. It's I mean, Scarlett Johansson delivers this monologue. It's a tour de force monologue. Adam Driver is amazing. All the interactions with the kids are amazing. I mean, I watched the first half an hour twice because I brought my wife in and we started again from the beginning. And I was picking things out. I mean, I would love to watch this movie again. I was picking things out of the framing that communicate wonderful little things, especially in the opening montage where you don't really know who these people are yet, but stuff is communicated in the backgrounds of shots, and it's this is an amazing movie that you don't get to see very often. These kinds of like brutally honest, raw examinations of people rubbing up against each other in all of the messy ways that we do in life. And coming out of it, I found it very hopeful. I found it, I mean, I was weeping, but it didn't destroy me in the way like a Requiem for a Dream did.
Right.
It really does. It's about death, the death of a relationship, but death can be very beautiful, and it's about appreciating what that thing that was alive, that is no longer alive, but what it was. And I love this movie for that.
To quote another Darren Aronofsky movie, "Death is the road to awe," perhaps.
Yeah.
I totally feel a lot of what you're saying there, Jeff. And let me just revise something I said. I said you shouldn't watch this with a loved one. I don't. That was too strong. That was too strong. I would say it's fine to watch with a loved one. Just be prepared for it to create a lot of feelings and a lot of like conversation afterwards, and then that's that's fine if you're ready for that.
Yeah. If your screening of Midsummer together did not go well, maybe
skip
watch
this
out.
one. It's totally fine to watch with a loved one, and it's very thought provoking, and there's a lot to discuss. All right. I mean, I have a lot to say about it as well, but I think we should move to spoilers before we get to it. And before we
Sure.
do that, why don't we talk about our next sponsor, Feels? Devindra?
Sure. So, I have anxiety. I deal with a lot of stress in my life between babies and work and podcasting, so much stuff. So, I have been using Feels to help me chill out a bit. And it's a CBD product. It can help you out with anxiety, chronic pain, trouble sleeping, things like that. It's premium CBD that's delivered directly to your doorstep. And it helps to naturally reduce stress, anxiety, all those things I was talking about. Like, it is one of those things I enjoy using, especially before I have to do some work at night. I take a few drops under my tongue. It's a really nice chill out thing. It's like an instant chamomile tea. It just instantly relaxes me. Feels offers human support. There's a hotline and text messaging support to help you figure out what type of CBD you may want to get and what type of dosage. And yeah, the best part is that it helps you feel better naturally. So join the Feels community to get Feels delivered to your door every month. And you'll save money on every order, and you can pause or cancel it at any time. And you've probably heard news about CBD. I will just read this statement from Feels. Represent Representations regarding the efficacy and safety of Feels have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. The FDA only evaluates food and drugs, not supplements like this product. This product is not intended to diagnose, prevent, treat, or cure any disease. If you have any concerns, talk to your doctor. And that's honestly good advice, but I would say that's a lot of great advice for the bad CBD you find at a lot of places. In New York, they're at bodegas, they're everywhere. I'm very happy to find Feels because it's like good, high quality stuff that I can trust and comes right to my door. So Feels has me feeling my best every day. It can help you too. Become a member today by going to feels.com/filmcast and you'll get 50% off your first order with free shipping. That's feals.com/filmcast to become a member and get 50% off automatically your first order and free shipping. Feels.com/filmcast, and that is the character / then filmcast.
Hey, Devindra, can you do me a favor, actually?
Mhm.
So you said this is a statement from Feels. It's not a statement, so
Sure.
I wouldn't say it's a statement from Feels. And then also, that part about
Sure.
the talk to your doctor, that's not from them either. So I would say our advice, so I would read it and say, like, this is from Feels' website. You can read the
Sure,
first
sure,
part.
sure.
This is from Feels' website. And then say, our advice is if
That's
you have any
not from the
concerns,
website?
the
If you have
talk
any
to your doctor
concerns,
is
talk
not
to
from
your
the
doctor.
website. That's not on the website.
I just
So
copy pasted what you put in that
yeah,
email.
yeah. I was asking them if it
Yeah.
was cool if I said that. So I
Okay.
would say the talk to your doctor part that you can say that that's us, right? Like you can
Yes.
say
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
A, this is from Phil's website, and B,
Okay.
like if you have it, like our advice is if you have any concerns, talk to your doctor.
Yep.
R is meaning like the /MCast advice.
Yep.
Or
Yep.
whatever,
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. So you
Gotcha.
just read that and we'll splice that in. Okay.
Yep. Representations regarding the efficacy and safety of Feels have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug. Well, I should intro it, right? We'll just say
Yeah,
okay,
that'd be
from the
cool.
Feels website. Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just going to read the statement from the Feels website. Representations regarding the efficacy and safety of Feels have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. The FDA only evaluates food and drugs, not supplements like this product. This product is not intended to diagnose, prevent, treat, or cure any disease. We'd suggest if you have any questions, talk to your doctor.
Great. Thanks, Devindra.
Cool.
Let me just make a note of that. Devindra rereads this part. Can you splice in? Take out all our conversation about this. All right.
Please.
All right, let's get to spoilers for Marriage Story starting right now.
Is it a spoiler to say this movie is very funny? I don't think so, but it is very, very funny at the same time that it is like devastating, and that's a delicate balance. I appreciate that.
I agree.
You remember during the course of my discussion about this, I talked about how I really appreciated the set dressing in this movie. I feel like the set
Yeah.
dressing is excellent. I mean, it really hit me hard when you're in the lawyers' offices. You compare like Laura Dern's office with
Right.
Ray
Her
Liotta's
gorgeous
office,
like
with
corner office.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like minimalist corner office with like Ray Liotta's office where like everything is made of oak. And then Alan Alda's office where it's like he's basically using like a plastic table, like folding table or whatever for
Office
his
in
like
an alley, basically.
yeah. And it's just like wow, what a way to communicate character and who these people are with just the set. I mean, I just thought that part was brilliant.
It's probably obvious, but it's like when Adam Driver's character gets the LA apartment, and it's just like this dead, empty thing with like, the furniture that came with the apartment. Like it looks terrible. Doesn't look like a home, and it's like just as empty as his soul, basically. But it
That,
is, yeah, it's all
the whole
conveyed there.
sequence with the woman watching them and him cutting himself and
Oh
like,
man.
oh, it's just so brutal. It is like from a comedy though.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
when he's bleeding and she's like, "Are you gonna take care of that?" He's like, I'm totally fine. I'm totally fine. And then like, that transitioning into him, trying to treat himself and trying to reach the paper towels on the other side while still running water on his hand. It's very relatable, and funny, but also,
How did he get better from that? That seems like a pretty bad cut.
yeah.
I'll say that Martha Kelly, by the way, plays the woman who is his like social worker, and she
Yeah.
is brilliant in the show Baskets.
Yeah, she
with,
is.
with Zach Galifianakis. So just a shout out to Martha Kelly. Always great to see her in something. Yeah, love that sequence that you're talking about, Jeff. And it's painful. The awkwardness is painful, and that's a lot of what drives much of this film.
I want to talk a little bit about sort of just to illustrate my point about blocking. There's a scene that you might not even think is very showy in this regard, but to me, it is the perfect example of why this movie is so special with regard to the blocking. And that is, there's a scene where she is going to serve him his papers, serve him his divorce notice.
Yep.
And we're in this small kitchen in her mom's house, and she's prepping everybody, and the camera's just sort of perched there. We're watching her. The sister's coming in and out, very nervous. The camera's kind of swiveling around, catching the sister come in and out of that hallway. We don't know what's happening down there, but we assume the kids are, need to be tended. There's some urgency outside the room that adds to the sense of tension about what's going to happen. And then we get to see through the window Adam Driver come out. He's very casual coming in. And then all of the stuff that happens between Adam Driver coming in and giving him actually the divorce papers.
He gets the chicken, and then it's like,
it's so good, man. It's so pedestrian and everyday, but it's also like there's this looming threat of him seeing the papers on the table. And there's one moment where he like glances right at it and then just doesn't see it and keeps going, and it's just perfect. It's perfect. It's like a thriller almost, this mini little thriller about what's going to happen when he sees these divorce papers, and then how it actually happens, where he's sort of gobsmacked but like doesn't react in a histrionic way. He doesn't go over the top. He just sort of like goes, oh, what's this? And the way that all of that playing out, the way that's all blocked and her coming in and out and all the characters moving through it, it's just, I think, masterclass in presenting that kind of moment, in blocking that kind of scene. And that's just one tiny example. This movie's full of that.
Yeah, it feels like every scene is like that. Like that's a great character moment too, because it's like he strolls in. This house is like his home, right? He jumps into the fridge. He's like, oh, if I were just visiting my in-laws' house, I probably wouldn't even go into the fridge and be like, start cutting up a rotisserie chicken because I'm hungry.
But he seems to have a better relationship with her mom than she does,
She does. He's really at home there. He's really comfortable there. He's like, okay, I'm gonna start eating this chicken. Don't even need a plate. I'm just gonna eat out of this rotisserie thing, right? It's fine. And then his realization when he realizes that, oh, he can't even stay there. Like it is now not your home.
Right.
Within the moment you stepped in that door to like you leaving.
Yeah.
It's devastating. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Jeff. You're talking about your takeaway from the movie as like this beautiful thing that these characters are part of, and I had a different takeaway. I mean, I don't think you're going to deny.
It's horrible. It's horrible, but yes.
Yeah. I don't think you're going to deny what my takeaway is, but like, I think we left the movie with like pretty different things that like made a lasting impression on us, right? I would say the number one thing for me that made a lasting impression was that basically divorce is a process that will completely grind up the people. Like it has a life of its own, right? Like you will like, take a like dip your toe in and be like, oh, let's just toy with like using a lawyer and, serving these papers and so on. But once you are in it, you actually cannot extricate yourself because, this process, this monstrous machine that you have been caught up in will now reach its like its own conclusion, completely independent of your desires and your what you prefer to
Yeah.
have this turn out as. And that's like because it's and some one point in the movie he's like, well, all the money I made from the MacArthur Genius Award, like I'm spending like I'm going broke because I'm paying for a divorce. Like he
Yeah.
realizes he has to do it in this way. It's like a prisoner's dilemma, like you have to like the first person defects and it's like, okay, well, you got an asshole lawyer. Now I need an asshole lawyer or else like I'm going to get completely screwed. And it's just like once you
Yeah.
start engaging in it, you cannot escape. And that's like
And it's so great how he goes to Ray Liotta first, and he and we as the audience go like, "Fuck this guy."
yeah, what an asshole.
like,
That guy's an asshole.
who is completely right
Yes.
from the word go on
Yep.
everything he says. And then you get to Alan Alda, who are like, "Oh, cool." He and we all say, "Oh, good. He found this sort of compassionate, decent human." And the decent human is on the same page, but just presents it in a different way. He's just sugarcoating the awfulness as well. And that's almost worse because he's not approaching the process clear-eyed.
Right.
It's it is a real harrowing view into the American legal system. I don't think it's limited to just divorce. But it is also, I also came away with the fact of like you never want to get divorced. But
well, but if you were going to get divorced, don't do it in this way, I would say.
I don't even know. The movie seems to say there's no right way.
Yeah. It's like even if you try to do good, like it all kind of falls apart.
I don't know if I
after a
agree with
certain
that
point.
because I think that like the way they were going to approach it was mediation. That was like originally what led to the letters being written. And this goes to like a big question that a lot of people have been talking about is like, do we feel like the movie comes down on one character's side or the other, right? And I don't have a firm answer for that. What I do see is that the person who is most monstrous on screen is Scarlett Johansson's character, right?
I disagree 100%.
Yeah,
Interesting because
Completely.
I'm saying on screen, like during the course of the events of the film itself. I'm not saying I'm not saying everything leading up to the film. Like my interpretation.
We have not seen the past 10 years
correct,
of their marriage.
And like my interpretation
right,
is like Adam Driver has been like the wrong one in everything that happened before the movie began, and that like once the movie begins, though, it is Scarlett Johansson who like escalates it by refusing to see the mediator and so on, right? That's just my own interpretation, but that like she's doing so in an extremely reasonable fashion because she feels that she has been wronged, as she explains so eloquently in that brilliant monologue, right?
It's not only that; it's not only that she has been wronged up to that moment. I think the only way that you see her as monstrous is if you don't see that he is continuing to completely ignore her throughout the whole process. Yeah. He has decided how it's going to be, and thinks that the way he decided it was going to be is the way it's going to be, and doesn't, he decided that they live in New York, right? And that's his decision. And her entire point is that I want to live here with my son right now. Mm-hmm. And that you have never heard me that I want that. You have never understood that I want that. And you don't now. So I think that, I don't know, I came away, I mean, they're both very sympathetic. I don't find them, I think the word monstrous is a bridge too far for me, but they both do things to each other that are unkind, to say the least, and underhanded perhaps as well. But man, I come out really on her side. I mean, I think the movie has the most hope for her. Like I think it is true what Laura Dern tells her, that this is an act of hope for her. It is her finally actualizing. It's her finally being a person instead of just being an accessory to someone else.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like she's the one who also, they talk about winning a lot in a really like basic way in this movie, and I guess to divorce lawyers, that is how they have to think. But who gains the most in this situation, in the split up? It is Nicole. It is like her finding her own footing, being somewhere where she really wants to be, and life is going to be harder for Charlie, but maybe, life was very easy for him before that because he was able to like subjugate his wife into, following everything he wanted. So it is even after they start the divorce, like it is not great that she didn't want to do the mediation, but that whole mediation thing was like the mediator being very on board with Charlie. Like it's very easy to think like, oh, you're against me, so now you two are teaming up with me or against me in this whole process. I feel like these characters act emotionally in very realistic ways. They don't act rationally all the time, but nobody does. That's not how people operate.
I think that the mediator just wanted them to write those lists for him
Yes,
to poop on.
Okay,
Very
so
nice,
I'm
very
just gonna, I feel I've tried to articulate myself. I'm gonna bring someone else into the mix. This is like from Tasha Robinson's Twitter account, who like I completely agree with this assessment. She says their narrative around who's at fault and who's more villainized in Marriage Story has been interesting. For my 2 cents worth, I felt Nicole came across as clearly less sympathetic and more at fault, and I'm surprised at people who found the film even-handed. Marriage Story does clearly care about Nicole's concerns and emotions and finds a lot to critique in Charlie's selfishness and obliviousness and the way he bends her needs around his own, but she's the one who keeps escalating, and it's an outsized punishment for what he did. Nicole's the one who brings a cutthroat, winning-obsessed lawyer into what was meant to be a painless, lawyerless separation. She's the one who repeatedly changes plans around childcare, then acts as if Charlie's being irrational for expecting her to stick to stated plans. Nicole is repeatedly blithe or oblivious about the huge sacrifices Charlie's making in trying to accommodate her, a parallel to the sacrifices she made to accommodate him, but we see virtually none of those on screen. We just hear about them in retrospect, which is unbalancing, end quote. Anyway, she goes on, but that's the kind of assessment that I was like, yeah, when I read that assessment, I'm like, yes, I completely agree. Charlie may have been the one that was more of an asshole before the movie began, and he certainly was an asshole to some extent during the course of the film, for sure. Like, I agree with you. Like, during the course of the movie, like, there's moments of lack of self-awareness, Jeff. There's that moment when they're talking with a lawyer, and it's like, why is it that when you mentioned we might go to LA, it's like a discussion, but when she says it, it's a promise. He's not even realizing like what he's doing in the moment. And I found that those to be like very revelatory. So for sure, he does not acquit himself well. It's not like he's like white knight during the course of the movie or not. But like
he also completely everything she says about him as a father is accurate. And
sure.
In the course of the film, not just leading up to the film, but in the course of the film, we see him being very selfish and self-absorbed in the caring of his son, and coming into LA and basically ignoring his kid while he's there because he's so obsessed with work, but still wanting to get credit for it. It is, I really couldn't disagree with Tasha. I respect her greatly, but I couldn't disagree with that more. That's just not the movie I felt like I saw. I think, she certainly ramps things up, but it is. She gives him a heads up at almost every time she can, and he completely ignores it.
Yeah,
he's absent. He doesn't pay her any mind, and it is only when things become, smacked into his face that he actually realizes, oh, this is real and this is a thing. Like
there's a certain level of privilege to the way he treats everything as being unreal. Like even after he gets served, it's like a full month goes by and you don't do anything about that, like beyond like seeing the Ray Liotta lawyer. Like it seemed like I know people like this. I know very smart creatives who are so focused on their work that everything else just kind of takes care of itself, hopefully, and a lot of that is dependent on their partner to kind of keep their life together. To what Tasha, that statement, like I could see, that point of view. I can certainly see why you guys feel that way, but to me, it's like, first of all, Laura Dern's character is not like just an asshole divorce lawyer. Like the way she like weaves this spell around Nicole that is kind of fascinating. Like you can see in her office that she's doing very well. Clearly she's very successful, but she also, like, from the moment she sees how like wounded Nicole is, she kicks off her shoes. She sits down on the couch with her. And it becomes like a very tender, like girlfriend experience almost, where she's actively listening to her. So I think like at the end of the day, she is a bit of a shark. Like that whole reveal, by the way, of like, oh yeah, we got one more day with Charlie. You won. right? That to me is the core of her character. Is like she's very nice, like she will speak very nice to you and listen and be empathetic, but at the end of the day, she is also as much of a shark as like Ray Liotta's character is,
Yes,
and
I
they
mean,
just go about it in different ways. But
you
I don't think like a character who had no power in her life going to somebody like that, who's actually listening to her and who may actually have a plan for her to like get her life back on track. Like I don't blame her for that, honestly.
well,
Yeah.
I think I mean, suffice to say, we don't need to get too much more into it, but I disagree with 100% of everything you're saying right now. I mean, the part about
And
her
we'll
being
leave
like
it at that.
the part about her being like this being a tender girlfriend experience. Agreed. She certainly has a much better Scarlett Johansson's character certainly has a much better experience at the lawyer's office, but I never lost the sense that this is just a person who's doing their job, and
Right.
being
But
extremely
you didn't as
being,
the viewer.
being extremely
I'm just talking about
manipulative and good
character
at
motivation.
it.
Yeah, I'm talking about character motivation here, and like a wounded character like Nicole, like looking for some sort of like just to fix this situation so that she can move on with her life in a way that helps her. Like to me, that made sense. That's all. I'm not saying like it is the right thing to do, but it made sense on a human level.
I
Yeah,
think
if we're defining monstrousness,
The,
to me,
wrong term.
go ahead,
Wrong
go
term, Jeff. Wrong term. Okay.
Okay, well, your
monstrous is
term.
too extreme, but like, yeah. So I'm saying like I retract that term, but I think she is clearly the aggressor. She drops like a nuclear bomb into the situation
But
when
Dave,
like
the-
a bazooka
the-
would be sufficient. I mean that's just my opinion. Like I don't
Yeah,
know.
well,
in her mind, this is World War II, right?
the-
in her,
the-
she's like,
the
I
only
gotta
reason-
end.
The only reason that you believe that is because you take the data as given by him. You take the data that I mean, the entire premise for the divorce is I want to move to LA and have a life. I want to move to LA and have a life, and I want to bring my kid with me. And the entire beginning of the divorce is him going, "You're moving back to LA, right?" And she's like, "I told you 100 times I'm not moving back to I'm not moving back to New York. I'm not moving back to New York. This is what I want to do." And him going, "Yeah, but we live in New York." And that is I think that is the key. If you look at this through a prism of, yeah, I agree with him that they lived in New York, then she
That's a
seems
fact.
like
Yeah.
then she seems like she's using a bazooka. If you accept the fact that she has every right to have a life in LA and to make that decision, then he is the monstrous one because every step of the way he is not listening, not doing the very basic things he would need to do to let that happen, not taking care of his kid, not paying attention to either of those people in his family. Like, it may seem like a bazooka to his life, but it's because it's his life. She didn't have one. She's trying to begin one.
All right, Jeff. I mean, I've already acknowledged your point, and I disagree. I think we're just we fundamentally see. It seems like we saw two different films, and that's okay. Like we often have different opinions on things. I'm just talking about what was on screen during the course of this movie. I'm not talking about all the stuff that happened before then.
I'm also talking about what's on screen.
I know,
in
but
the
like,
course
hey,
of this movie.
we disagree. There's other interesting things to talk about. I think. So,
I know.
like,
I just want to say, I'm not.
All right.
Don't get upset. We're
I'm not upset,
debating.
dude. I'm not upset.
I think for me, the thesis of this movie and the reason it is a movie about hope, and it is explicitly stated in the text, is it is about a woman finally finding herself, finally becoming a person. And that it's like the end of this movie is happiness and him finally going, "Oh, I'm going to move out here and support the fact that we can have a family out here for a while." Like,
by the way, great little character beat in that scene, because she blinks at the news. It was like, "Oh, I'm happy for you, but also fuck you because I wanted something like that." There's a sense of like competitiveness in how she receives that news too. It's
not
really
how I took that
interesting.
moment. That's not how I took that moment at all.
Okay, it's fine. It's fine. It's okay to have different interpretations.
No,
I'm just laying this out there.
I actually think I'm taking it more extreme than you, Devindra, but I'll share my point. Jeff, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead. You can finish.
No, I'm finished.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, Devindra.
Wait. Give me a second. Like, I do think like that moment between two creatives, like she is now working. She has a job. She's built a life of her own, and he comes in as like, first of all, it's good news that he's coming back to LA, but he's doing it in a way that I was like, there is like a level in terms of like how well they're doing, and now they're not in one relationship, so his success is now in some way takes away from her success. Like, I just found that really interesting, and it's a great beat to have in the movie because it's like a half a second look. It is not even that much, but to me that's a really fascinating way to portray these people who still care about each other but are now like competing in some respects too.
So I had a completely different takeaway from that scene, which is actually I'm gonna spoil the movie Boyhood. I think we've all talked about that movie on here, right?
Yeah.
So at the end of Boyhood, basically, like in the movie Boyhood, Ethan Hawke is like this deadbeat dad, right? And he kind of like doesn't show up for his son and whatever. And then towards the end of the movie, he gives this monologue about how like so much about like he becomes like a responsible person during the course of the movie, during the course of like a decade in this person's life. Ethan Hawke's character becomes a better father. He gets married. He straightens out. He like becomes like a business person, and he says to his son like, so much is about timing. Like take me for instance. I probably turned out roughly about the same, like something like what your mom would have actually appreciated and liked, but it didn't happen in the right time frame for that to work out. And that's the moment I was reminded of at the end of this film when he says like, hey, by the way, I took a job in LA. And it
Yep.
wasn't like a competition of like, you're an artist, I'm an artist. It was like, this is the thing I have been wanting for the entire like last 10 years. Like
Yeah.
this thing that you
I
just
think
did.
it's that too, by the way, Dave. The thing you're saying, it
Yeah.
is that. It is that, but it is also like, oh, well, that's nice. It would have been nice if we did this, when
Right,
we were
like
a family.
couldn't
There's
we
a
have
lot of
done this
different
like
ways
5
to
years
do
ago? We
this.
could have avoided
Yeah.
this entire horrifying process in our lives if we had just done this thing. And
But also, the only way you get to him doing that thing is by her forcing it to happen, is by her actualizing and saying, I deserve to be a person. And the only way he'll hear that through the whole movie, he doesn't hear that ever. The only way he hears it is when lawyers tell him. And that's, I think that's the real tragedy, is that it takes her, like the mediation thing. There's no universe in which the mediation thing works for these people because he's so self-absorbed and so closed to even hearing who she is and what she wants. Like the idea that she's blowing up the mediation because she's such a bitch and just doesn't want to read her letter, to me, I think misses what the movie is actually saying, which is like, that's the reason they're getting divorced, is because this kind of shit doesn't work.
all right. Well, any other thoughts on Marriage Story before we wrap it up, get to our next review?
I just want to say that the moment at the very end, or not the very, very end, but the moment before the very end, the child reading the list, while wildly improbable and contrived, I found to be utterly beautiful and moved me to tears. I mean, the
Adam
idea.
Driver in that moment, his like chin quiver is just like, man, that's a good chin. Good chin. I think all the wrap-up scenes of this movie are also kind of fantastic too, because it puts Nicole in a place of like, oh, she is, she's there. She's surrounded by all these people who love and support her. Things are going great. Charlie has a lot to work through. He is singing sad Sondheim songs, for karaoke, and it is, it's rough. It's rough, but it's understandable what he's going through. And then he shows up and they do the Halloween thing and she has a new guy. And it just feels like, well, life moves on. It kind of reminds me of Parenthood in that way, both the show and the movie.
This is an interesting year for Sondheim. There's been 3 hit movies this year that have featured Sondheim. At least 3, I think. I'm thinking of Joker, which is like the most implausible one. Knives Out, and this movie. A lot of. I
have to say, this is one of those things too that reminds me that I just have this huge like cultural black hole that I'll never fill, because I don't have any love for, like, I hear these things and they're fine, but I don't have any like nostalgia or love for Sondheim or a lot of the stage music. So when people were flipping out over the karaoke scene, because that was all over Twitter, I was like, okay, I've never heard the song before, but I guess this is nice. This is a nice character moment. That's nice.
I mean, it's beautifully performed and done in one take, and it's like, the fact that the camera just sits on him there and forces him to do it, and like he almost quits at a moment and then comes back, and it's
Yeah.
I don't know. I
There's
love this
also
movie.
nothing as awkward as sad karaoke. Man,
Yeah.
that is everybody in that room, especially the people who aren't his friends, because it's like an open restaurant, I guess. So man,
So Dave, did you not care for this film?
No, I thought it was brilliant. It's like one of my
Yeah.
top 10 movies of the year. I thought it was good.
Yeah,
Jeff,
for
we
sure.
we strongly disagree about one key component of the movie, but I still think it's great, and I recommended it when I talked about it on the podcast a couple weeks ago. So
Cool.
I will say one other thing about it. Actually, it's one thing that like how we all have like little things that like tickles your fancy, or that you're like whenever you see it in a movie, you're like, oh, like that thing really kind of touches me. The one thing that I like am always a sucker for is like couples like knowing one person in the couple like knowing like preferences of the other person. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like in real life, like that always gets me. I'm always like, whenever I see that, I'm always like, oh, like that's so sweet that they
He'll
know each other's
he'll
stuff.
have this salad. With the
Yeah,
thing.
when he's like, I
Yeah.
can't decide what I want to eat, and then she's like, okay,
Yeah.
he'll have the salad, hold the dressing, and da 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 da.
Yeah.
And it's just like such an amazing touch about
Mhm.
how that shows you how intimate that relationship was, and like how you kind of like farm off components of your life to another person when you're married to them, right? You're like, oh, the
Yeah.
thing about ordering the food, like that, this person's gonna like take control of that for me, and that's completely fine. Um, and
Yeah.
I would have never thought that up. It feels like something that must have happened in real life, but I would have never thought that
Oh,
up.
yeah.
Like, oh, they're gonna be in the lawyer's office arguing strenuously, and then they're gonna order lunch, and through the lunch ordering, that's when you learn how close they are. Like I would it's
Well,
just like
Yeah, yeah.
that whole scene is great because it's not just it's the lawyers too, where they're like, fuck you, my client, fuck you, my client," and then like,
Like,
"Shall we get
okay,
lunch?"
time
"Oh,
time
yeah.
out, time out.
Yeah, yeah. It's like,
Let's have
how's the
lunch.
family? It's
Yeah.
you
It's a
you
very
should try
civil
this place,
conversation.
It's great.
that.
Yeah, it's just a game for them.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just
It's also true. You see that also when Ray Liotta's character and Laura Dern's character like interact outside the courtroom for a little bit. They're like, oh yeah, I saw your wife at the blah, and
yeah.
it's like this is just a job for them. Like
Yeah,
these
as it
people's
should
lives
be.
are being destroyed, and like it's just like they're going to work. It's like it's
Yeah.
the day job.
Yeah.
So I love those kind of like little touches that help to make this movie what it is. And just wanted to call that out before I wrap it up. So the movie's Marriage Story. It's brilliant, and I think the fact that we had such different opinion. Victor Di Giovanni in the chat room is saying like it's Schrodinger's marriage. Like I think different people watch this. They bring parts of themselves to the viewing of this film, and they come away with. I think it's pretty clear they come away with pretty vastly different interpretations of like who is in the right, who's in the wrong, even what the movie is trying to say about it. And I would say that in general is a mark of a really brilliant piece of art. So that's Marriage Story. It's on Netflix. Let's move on to the next review we have to talk about. It's Uncut Gems.
Can I run to the bathroom actually?
Yeah.
Do that.
And you didn't think we would talk for a long time.
Yeah.
We talked for a long time. Even the what we've been watching was long.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, it's great. It's good stuff.
But I was saying, I think our Uncut Gems review is going to be pretty short. We'll see. I don't know.
Let's see. I'm just saying when we talk that long about
But I just
600 grand.
think it's like basically it's like it just is very like it's clear with that conversation like you Jeff and me are starting from like fundamentally different realities. You know what I mean? Like it's
I
just, like,
guess.
it's
I
just like
guess.
there's no way. I just know like there's no way. Like it's not even like oh you're like 20% different away from where I am. You're like 100% different from where I am. So it's just like
I wouldn't say this on the show, but I feel like I don't know. I don't even want to attribute it to Tasha's comment because I don't know, and she's not here to say any different. But it feels like some people, the interpretation comes from well, this was made by a man, so he can't be fair to the woman. He's going to throw her under the bus. And I just didn't at all see the movie that way. I just felt like it was so sympathetic to her. It's about her getting something beautiful. It's about the best thing that ever happened to her was getting divorced.
Yeah, I know that that's how you feel.
Do you not think that she's better off not married to him?
I 100% I agree with that statement, but it's not her self-actualizing, Jeff. It is the method by which she does so. That is what is.
It is the
in
only
contention.
method that would work.
That's
There's-
your
you-
opinion, Jeff. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing.
That's
That's your
the
opinion.
text of the movie. The text of the movie
I don't believe that. I
the
don't
text of the
believe that
movie
that's
is
true.
He's self-absorbed and
We-
can't see
We
her.
don't see what the result of the mediation would have been. It is completely
I'm back.
short circuit.
I'm back.
Anyway, Beatty, cut all that stuff out, okay? So here we go. Jeff, exactly the point I was trying to make.
I guess.
That was from the trailer for Uncut Gems, the newest film by the Safdie brothers, Benny and Josh Safdie. I'm going to read the plot summary from IMDb. A charismatic New York City jeweler, always on the lookout for the next big score, makes a series of high-stakes bets that could lead to the windfall of a lifetime. Now, Devindra, you and I are big fans of the Safdie brothers' previous film, Good Time, which I thought
I will say I've become less of a fan of that movie over time, but I did enjoy it initially.
Interesting. I thought it was brilliant at the time as not only a great thriller, but a great social commentary about white privilege. And I think it's a brilliant film.
Mm-hmm.
And it has an amazing performance by Robert Pattinson. But in any case, I think you were really kind of the driving force. You're like, I really want to review Uncut Gems. So I'm curious,
we got to review this.
what was your fascination with this movie, and did this movie live up to your expectations?
Well, also because people wouldn't shut the hell up about this movie. Like this movie was getting so much buzz. I love Sandler in dramatic mode. Like Sandler using that like nervous energy he has, like in a way, like almost like Punch Drunk Love. But this is in a totally different direction. So I love this movie. I think it is. I think it's just a more accomplished movie than even Good Time, where I liked Good Time, but it also felt like a light version of a very Scorsese-esque thing, whereas this feels very different, right? This takes into the world of like New York City jewelers, the people you pass when you're walking through the Diamond District, and the sort of like crazy lives they live, like what they're selling, who they're selling to. His energy, Adam Sandler is just infectious in this movie, and this energy is basically loud New Yorkers shouting at each other. Like most of this movie is just shouting. It is like a Robert Altman movie.
Most shouting in a movie in 2019 for sure.
It is the most shouting. It is Robert Altman done in the style of everybody shouting at the same time. And man, it is like anxiety inducing. It's hard to watch, but it's also like so New York. Like when I hang out with like my New York family, and it's a very New York thing, I think. Like the way a lot of the expression is shouting all the time, even if you're not talking about like gambling and sports and legal things. I think this movie is just of a place. And the character itself is fascinating. Adam Sandler's character is clearly a gambling addict, clearly like an adrenaline junkie in a certain way. Like it is just wild seeing this guy go, and clearly he's smart and he makes some smart moves, but he's so self-destructive. Like he cannot let a win be a win. Like he will always try to play it further and ultimately make things worse. So I love this movie. It is the nervous energy coming out of this movie is unlike anything I've seen this year.
Jeff Kanata, thoughts on Uncut Gems?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my thoughts on Uncut Gems are best summed up in the form of a limerick. This film puts me in a state of greatly elevated heart rate. It's wild to witness someone live like this, just constantly spinning more plates.
Nice.
I don't know how many people are familiar with that old chestnut, that old vaudevillian
Yes.
routine of the plate spinner.
Yep.
It has become a cliche, but it was based on an old act where a performer would take big long sticks and put plates on them and spin them, and the sticks would be balanced and the plates would be balanced on the sticks, and because of the centrifugal force of the plate, they would stay, as long as the plate kept spinning, it would stay balanced on the end of the stick, and then the performer would have numerous sticks, and the thrill of the audience would be to watch a plate start to wobble and lose its momentum, and the performer would have to run over and spin one of the plates, and then another one would wobble, and he'd run back over and spin that, and just try to keep all of them going as long as possible. That's this movie in a nutshell. And it is an incredible ride. It is an incredible ride. I've never seen anything quite like this. It is, you're strapped to the back of this guy while he
It's like,
just
might as well be a GoPro. Yeah.
yes, while he just goes through the kind of life that I find so unlivable. This is the antithesis of everything I want out of my life. It is, and you're right, Devendra. He's addicted to it on every level. That stealing from Peter to pay Paul. That, you know, every moment he gets something, he risks it for something else, for something greater. He's constantly bombarded on all sides of promises he's made to one person that he has to fulfill to somebody else. It is harrowing and thrilling and fun, and a vicarious look at these people who I assume exist. I assume this is a thing.
Oh, yeah.
These are people. These are people that are like this, not just in the jewelry business, but just like all over the planet that just can, you know, pay off one credit card with another one, or, you know, these things that are just, I can't live like that. I would just melt into a puddle of anxiety. But it is wildly fun to watch a movie about it. And Sandler is great. It's sort of proof that he can still be great when he has the material to do it with. Dave, in the last review we did this episode, you brought up production design. I think this movie is a masterwork of production design. So much is communicated without ever pointing at it, just in the kinds of apartments we go into, the kinds of houses, the jewelry district itself, the offices of those places, what stuff is working, what stuff is not working. When we walk into his son's room and he's got memorabilia wall to wall inside there, it communicates so much with so little. I love this movie. I think Kevin Garnett gives a great performance. Like, who knew? Who knew? But I assume, Dave, based on your words last week about The Irishman, that you are angry at this movie because of the lies it is telling about a real event in our history.
No.
I assume that you are furious that it is taking a real event with real people and trying to claim that there was some magic powers at play. And
I mean, I think you're joshing me. I think you're joshing me, Jeff. But
I see the Marriage Story reviews carrying over into this review. Parents, please don't fight. Please don't fight.
No, Jeff, that did not bother me. In fact, I thought it was actually quite brilliant how they integrated a real life event into this story.
So it's impossible to do something based on history and have it not.
But the protagonist, but the protagonist is not a real person in this movie. Okay, so whatever point the movie's trying to make is made separate from the real life event. Sure, the real life events factor into it, but it is not the crux on which this movie hangs, in my opinion, at least. So, that being said, point taken,
I just want to
Jeff.
twist the screws a little bit.
We're going to be that court soon enough. It's going to be rough.
So I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was really well done, and I think that the only thing that everything you guys said is true. I agree 100. Unlike with our Marriage Story review, agree 100% with everything you're saying. I think that and also talking about the set dressing. I mean, one of the things that I really love about the Safdie brothers movies is how they use lighting. Like, there's always so much like fluorescent lights in their movies, and it always has this amazing character to it. Partially, I think, due to the fact that I believe this movie was shot on film, and they shoot their movies on film, and that's something that's rare. And there is a character to the image that I think you wouldn't get if this was like in pristine, digital imagery with no grain or anything like that. And so I just love the look of it. I love the feel of it. There's this intensity to it. There's there's crosstalk, as you guys have pointed out, and there's this like kind of propulsive nature of, is this person going to be able to manage this extremely dangerous tightrope act? You know, and there's all this suspense to it. So I really enjoyed it. I liked it a lot. It's one of my favorite films of the year. It's so crazy, by the way, that like in the first 10 and a half months of this year, I saw 6 movies that I'd feel comfortable putting in my like top 10. And in the last, 2 months,
6 weeks,
or 6 weeks, I've seen like, 8 movies that I've watched.
Yeah,
like it's just
it's
like
weird
all the
how this
amazing
It
movies.
tends to be
I've
the
done.
case, though, right? I mean, it's like awards season, et cetera, et
Yeah,
cetera. A lot of really good
yeah.
movies come out. now.
Generally, it has felt better paced to me though. Like in general, I've
Yeah.
been like, oh, there's been like one movie I saw in February that was amazing, and one in March that was, and so on. And like, but this year it's just like a bunch of.
It's been a rough
crap.
year for you, Dave.
Yeah, it's been a
It's
rough
been-
year,
yep,
and
rough
then like
year.
now
Yeah.
like some really amazing riches. I think the only thing that I would say, and we really should be in spoilers to get really into this, but I'll just hint at it right now. Is I
Uh-huh.
think the only thing I really don't that's like keeps this movie from being like best of all time or whatever for me is
score?
just that I don't feel like it has that much to say beyond being like a really effective genre exercise. I think that
That's how I felt about Good Time. Like after I started thinking about it, because I feel like we made a good argument for what that movie could be about in the in our review, but I've revisited that movie. It just didn't leave me with as much of an impact. Whereas this one's like, I hear you. I don't think there's a greater message here, but this guy, like seeing this guy do this thing, we know so many people like him. It feels like a singular story about an adrenaline junkie like this, and I don't know the way we push ourselves in America. Capitalism,
Yeah,
capitalism's
it's
bad.
late stage capitalism for sure.
Late
Yeah.
stage capitalism. Yeah, that you can throw that on anything. So go for that.
My one thing that I didn't, not to change gears, I want to talk about that more, but my one thing that I didn't like was I felt the score was just too oppressive. It made itself known.
You didn't need more shouting. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's just it's loud and it just I mean I like the music as music, but it just felt like, can we turn that down for please a little?
This is just Jeff in your old age now. You're like, I need a break from this movie. I just need to relax. I kind of related to that too. Like everything feels oppressive in this movie, and even their like camera movements, even their style, like everything is just meant to like disarm you a little. I do find that one of the this movie opens with miners finding this chunk of like uncut opal, and the camera zooms in and in and in. It's like, oh man, are we finding something? Is there something meaningful about this? And then it transitions to another scene, and I feel like what it transitions to is hilarious, and I don't know if there's a deeper meaning to it, but it feels like a big fuck you to the audience, basically like, oh, you're just staring at this guy's something that is hilarious to me. Yeah.
Well, before we get to spoilers, I do want to just say I think pretty much every performance in here is awesome. Adam
So good.
Sandler is great as Howard Ratner, who's like he is addicted to the adrenaline, and like not only is he addicted to it, he has become inured to it. Like it no longer creates any feeling for him anymore. It's just his way of living. Julia Fox, this is her first movie.
Yeah,
she, I
she's
believe,
great.
was an influencer before she did this movie, and yeah, she's awesome. You can totally understand why Howard would fall for this person. Much more difficult to understand why she would fall for Howard, but whatever. She
I
sells
agree, dude.
you know?
I had that same thought. I'm like,
Yeah.
what does she see in this
what
dude?
does she see in this guy? Idina Menzel playing the anti-Frozen. Like she's definitely
Yeah, she won't let
not-
it go.
she did not let it go. And Lakeith Stanfield, like as a smooth operator, as Damani, I loved him. And Eric Bogosian playing the opposite of the Gil Evis character he plays in Succession, as a extremely cutthroat hyper capitalist. Every performance is awesome in this movie. and I
Dude,
just
Kevin
wanna give it
Garnett.
Yes,
Dude, Kevin
Kevin
Garnett
Garnett.
That's good.
has stuff to do in this movie. He's not
Yeah.
just walk on, NBA, cameo. It's
Yeah.
not just like, oh, there's a real NBA player in this. He has dramatic scenes that he needs to play,
Yep.
and he does it well.
Yeah.
I love even the like tough guys that Bogosian surrounds himself with. Like they look like if I walk into a bar and those guys are like at the bar and they're the only ones there, I do a Grandpa Simpson and just go turn right around because I don't want any part of this.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's New York,
yeah,
baby.
they're so great.
Yeah.
And I'm so curious about how you conceive of this movie. Like, do you first get your NBA star and then work backwards from there? About like,
I believe the story is the Safdies. Their family worked in the Diamond District. Their father did. So a lot of these stories, like the insanity of it, I think they pieced together a bunch of things.
no, but I mean, do you first cast Kevin Garnett?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
find the games that work for like.
Do you fit
first...
in the weekend to be in a particularly not so great scene? I don't know.
Well, no, but I mean, it hinges on the events of real NBA history.
Yes.
So do you like find out who you can get first, and then like find out the games that would work best based on I don't know.
So according to an interview with Vulture, they originally designed the film around Kobe Bryant, and they also considered Stoudemire and Joel Embiid. Quote, it started with Stoudemire, who is a Knicks player in 2010. That's when we started the project. He's famously a black Jewish person. So the themes of the movie presented themselves that way. Ethiopian Jewish tribe, Beta Israelites. Black opals, which were found by a Jewish tribe in the Beta Israelites in Wheelo mines. Amare is a very spiritual person. He calls himself the spiritual gangster. But about 2015, 2016, we were having trouble getting financing, finding the right person to star as Howard, and our agency suggested casting up and going with Kobe Bryant. But Kobe, they didn't understand the themes of the movie. He's a West Coast person. We needed East Coast games because we had to write around the reality of the games. End quote.
This is a very East Coast energy movie. Like I think in particular, like Jeff, seeing you sit through this, I would love to be in the theater with you and just like, there's nothing California about this movie, man.
No, not at all. But I loved it. I mean, but that one casting choice defines so much of the movie because it's like we got to drive to Philadelphia. We got to, we got to. It sets the date. The date comes up on this movie only because it has to be these games. It's so interesting to me how that all
and it informs like everything in the movie, like the technology. They're using like old iPhones and stuff. Yeah,
right.
Apparently Stoudemire wouldn't shave his head to match the games that we had to shoot around. So then we were like, okay, who is left? And we looked, and Kevin Garnett. Fate is a real thing. It was meant to be Kevin's role from the beginning, even though we hated him as Knicks fans. End quote. So,
his name is Garnett. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, then they write that into the movie where even Adam Sandler's character is like, I'm rooting. I'm a Knicks fan. I'm rooting.
Yeah. All right, let's get to spoilers for Uncut Gems starting right now. So I think one of my favorite parts of this movie is when he hands him that, like, this character is the architect of his own undoing, right? And like at every step of the way, he could do something that would lessen his pain, right?
This movie could be titled a series of very stupid decisions.
Yes. Yes.
Increasingly stupid decisions.
They're so bad. But I think really when the movie starts to kind of unravel is when he gives the opal to Kevin Garnett. And you're just like, oh, he's never getting this back, or he's not getting it back in the way he wants.
What are you doing? Yeah.
You do not let that out of your sight. But he does, and then there's later that brilliant scene when he's like the bidding scene, and he asks his friend to like bid for him, and it's just like incredible.
His father-in-law. It's his father-in-law.
Yes.
And he's about to get a divorce. It's like it's so great. But no, my favorite thing about that scene is like, I'm gonna give you this opal. Like that is completely stupid. It's okay. I'll give you my ring as collateral. Okay, cool. Immediately walks to the pawn shop. Immediately.
Yeah.
It is that level of chaos is what is so vicariously fun for me about this movie.
Chaotic evil. It's chaotic evil.
Yes.
Right? And
there's no moment of just going, okay, everything's fine. It's always got to be fucking myself,
And I think there's like peaks and valleys to the anxiety. It's like you're never not anxious when watching this movie, but there's peaks and valleys to it. So when he turns in the ring and he's like, okay, if you don't come here by blank day, I'm keeping this ring. And like, I'm extremely anxious until he gets the ring back. Then he gets the opal. Like Kevin Garnett just shows up with the opal. And I'm like, oh my gosh, amazing. You should be kissing the ground right now.
Yeah.
And then shows up with the ring, and then he like gets the ring back.
He's like, where's the ring?
Everything is going according to, like, everything is looking up for Howard, right? And then this final sequence where he takes the money and bets it on Kevin Garnett, and it was excruciating. And I just have to say that, like, I watched this movie on a screener disc, and I had to like pause it and like walk away and come back because I was so stressed out during this like final sequence of like where they're watching the game and you have no
Yep.
idea what's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
It just is like
They're just trapped in the room, man. That is. There are movies where you could predict what's how things are going to end up, and I feel like this movie ended in a way I predicted, but I did not expect that whole torture situation. Basically,
it was cool that they did it at Mohegan Sun. I've been to that place. I've been to Mohegan Sun, and it is a
Yeah.
brilliant casino. But that whole final sequence was super brilliant, and like it kept me guessing until the last minute as to what was going to happen. Right? I mean, the moment when the rich guy who's hitting on Julia Fox like goes up and picks up the money, I'm like, oh my gosh, did he subdue her and like he's taking
Yeah.
the money for himself? Like, and let me ask you guys this question: in your head canon, like in your mind's version of events, does she get away or is she captured by this extremely violent thug that murders Howard and his brother-in-law?
No,
I would
I think
hope-
she's the hero. I think she's the
Yeah.
hero of this movie. Yeah.
I would hope like once she realizes what happens, because she will hear the news at some point. She's like, I should not go anywhere where I don't never going
Yeah.
back to that apartment. Like, just go, disappear.
Just become a ghost, vanish into the night. Yeah.
I
Become-
love.
become a
By the way,
ghost,
there's
become one of 6 underground, and then you will.
Interview Magazine. By the way, has an interview with Uncut Gems, handsome older man. His name is Wayne Diamond. He is like an East Coast character. This is who he is. That character he plays in the movie is who he is. It's amazing.
I mean,
Go check that out. Yeah.
I don't know how it couldn't be. I was much more the roller coaster ride for me was the first time he does the bet on Garnett, and he wins, and then gets abducted
Yeah.
by by Eric Bogosian, and then he finds out you didn't place you canceled the bet.
Yeah.
You canceled. To me, that was like,
Painful.
oh man, oh, because he's gotten everything he wanted in that situation. Like it's all perfectly lined up. He did it. He put his balls on the table. He did it, and it's like the guy canceled the bet.
So I found that
Ugh.
excruciating, Jeff, for sure. When I watched it, like, oh my gosh, what a terrible loss. But then, as the movie continues, you realize, man, if he had gotten that money, he just would have wasted it somehow anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The
Yeah.
cycle would have kept going
Yeah.
until his end. Yeah.
The moment that I was not surprised by the gunshot to the head. I
Yep.
really wasn't. I just felt like if the movie didn't do that, I would have been surprised because you don't lock those dudes in that room for that long. They're not going to come out and be like, well, I guess you got the money. It's all good,
I think, honestly, I'm curious. I want to ask you guys what you think about this. Like, there are a couple sections in the movie where characters stare intensely into the opal, and it zooms into this opal, and it becomes like Nebula. And Devindra, you
Yeah.
point out like it then becomes like Howard's colon, right? But I'm curious, like, what you guys make of that. Like, my interpretation of like why the movie's showing you all this is that like it reminds me of a movie I was involved with, The Primary Instinct, with Stephen Tobolowsky, and he says in the movie, he's like, what mankind desires more than anything else is transcendence, and that they will pursue transcendence through any means necessary. And in the case of Howard, it's through nonstop adrenaline. But like that, the opal like represents somehow like having the opal, being in control of the opal represents like transcending what humankind is typically capable of. I don't know what
It's an ancient, impossible thing, holding something like that and being able to see inside it. You're seeing history itself. So
yeah.
I can understand that. Like, to me, I enjoy visiting museums and staring at minerals for the same reason.
Yeah, I mean, if the movie is about anything, I think it's about that monologue that Adam Sandler gives to Kevin Garnett, where he explicitly says, "This is me. This is my Game 7. This is what I do. That you try to drop 30 on the opponent and get in the zone and feel alive. This is how I do it. I try to win this. I try to manipulate this, and this is my NBA Finals." And I think, if you're talking about transcendence, I think that's that character. And I think this is the movie's attempt. Those shots are the movie's attempt to address exactly what you're saying, David, at the beginning of your review, which is it's trying to be about something, right? It's trying to link this micro series of events to a sort of grander macro cosmic thing of why are we all here? What are we all doing? How, we're just a speck of dust in an infinite cosmos. This hustle is it's so micro. It is so about all of these little hyper important details, and ultimately it doesn't matter. I don't know. That's kind of what I got out of it.
Yeah, I think that's a great interpretation, Jeff. And yeah, I think you're right that's what that could be about. I don't know. Like, I've read this like pretty withering review of the movie that's like, hey, you watch the movie, it's about this dumb guy doing stupid things, and shocker, the stupid things lead to his demise. We kind of know where this is heading from the beginning, and the movie does little to surprise you. It's just exceptionally well executed.
But there's a ton of that's my favorite one of my favorite genres. I mean, A Simple Plan comes to mind. Judgment Night comes to mind. I bring that movie.
Most Coen Brothers movies, like,
yes,
a lot of things. Yeah,
that's one of my favorite genres, subgenres.
And let me be clear. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that point of view. But I'm like, I kind of, when I read that review, I'm like, I kind of see what you're talking about. I still really love the movie. You know
what that also is?
What?
Macbeth. and Coriolanus and and Romeo and Juliet. That's there's a lot of great drama that's about people making increasingly stupid decisions that lead to their demise.
Yeah, but they're done so with aplomb, and that's why we love them. All right. Anyway, I think that should bring us to the end of our review of Uncut Gems. It's out in limited release right now. It did crazy on the independent box office circuit. It did like $100,000 per theater, I think, which is like really, really good. I think a record for A24. So check it out if you have a chance.
I had to drive to go see it. I had to drive. I couldn't walk.
Man.
Across the street. I had to drive. But when I got there, packed.
Oh,
packed
wow.
House.
Amazing. Cool.
Yeah, same.
Well, stay tuned to what we'll be discussing next week on the podcast. In the meantime, find more episodes of the show at slashfilmcast.com. Email us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. Our theme song comes from adamwarrock.com. Our spoiler bumper is from filmmaker Kyle Hillinger. This episode was edited by Beatty Zhang. Until next week, gentlemen, Jeff, where can I find more of your work on the internet?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Jeff Kanata, which is spelled with 2 N's and 1 T. I do a video game podcast called DLC, which you can find anywhere you get podcasts or by visiting 5by5.tv/DLC. I also do a live play Dungeons & Dragons show called The Dungeon Run. Last week's episode, people are talking about being the best one we've ever done. It was an edge-of-your-seat thrill ride, characters in peril, a crazy battle with a blood monster. It was wild werewolves. It was amazing. Check it out. You can find it on YouTube by searching for The Dungeon Run. You can also find it as an audio podcast, which is a great way to experience the show, by searching for The Dungeon Run anywhere you get podcasts. Or you can watch it live Wednesday nights when we record it at 6 p.m. Pacific time at caffeine.tv/The Dungeon Run.
How about you, Devindra?
Or you can find me on Twitter at Devindra. I write about tech at Engadget.com, and I'm also hosting the Engadget podcast there. So go check that out.
I'm doing a show where I talk with interesting people every week. It's called Culturally Relevant. Check it out on Apple Podcasts or culturallyrelevantshow.com. Now, next week, we are going to be reviewing Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. And I will just say this. No promises, but if you are an ultra fan of The Rise of Skywalker, if you're one of those people that like bought tickets opening night, you may be rewarded with something cool in your feed on Friday morning on the Slash Filmcast. And when I say something cool, I don't mean like anything beyond the scope of what we typically do here on the podcast. But
yeah.
I mean, don't expect something actually cool. I'm just saying
it's our review. It might be early.
I'm just saying check the feed on Friday morning is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
We didn't get J.J. Abrams or anything, so don't get too excited.
Okay. Well, we did just get Rian Johnson.
Yeah, that was pretty
on
great.
last week's episode. So check that out. That was a good one. So
he made a Star Wars movie.
He made a Star Wars film. I mean, that's not the movie we talked about, but
no. But it's all relative.
All right. See you guys very soon.